Okay, greetings everybody. I'm Marguerite Rigoglioso, director of Seven Sisters Mystery School, and welcome to my Bridging Dimensions show. Today, my phenomenal guest is investigative mythologist and author William Henry, and we're going to dive into what drives his passion for his intrepid spiritual and historical research. I want to first off mention that he has invited me to be his special guest for a phenomenal afternoon online with his first Star Walkers Cafe conference, which means we're doing a combined presentation. It's entitled Mother Mary, Star Walker from the Pleiades, and Parthenogenesis. Yes, we are bringing all of that together. This is going to be live online Saturday, May 11th, 2024, as of this filming. If you're seeing it after that, you can get it in replay. It will be available indefinitely. And the link is in the show notes for anybody who wants to register and see it live or watch it in replay. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that at the end of our chat, so stay tuned. As always, if you enjoy this video, please give it a like, please share it, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that more of this great content can reach others through the magic of the algorithmic doings. Okay, so William Henry, you are one of the most passionate advocates for the return of the sacred feminine in harmony with the sacred masculine on the planet today. And certainly, I think you are the man who holds that pillar most strongly. You are a font of wisdom on the mystical teachings of Yeshua and the Marys as they apply to our lives, as well as historically, and you are prolific on many, many other topics as well. You're perhaps best known as the spiritual voice and consulting producer of the massive hit History Channel program, Ancient Aliens, and you are a host of the Gaia TV series, The Awakened Soul, The Lost Science of Ascension, and Arcanum. You are also a tour leader to sacred sites, a regular conference speaker, and the author of a whopping 18 books like The Secret of Sion and The Watchers, Lost Secrets of Resurrection, Ascension, and Perfection. Phew! So just to give viewers who might not be as familiar with you a sense of your work before we wax a little more personal, let's have you start by sharing what you're most passionate about these days in terms of what you're speaking about publicly. What's a main nut that you're imparting to others that's really exciting you right now?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, Marguerite. It's an honor and pleasure to be here, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. Right now, I mean, as you mentioned, I have been a contributor on Ancient Aliens for 14 years, 16 seasons, over 200 episodes. And in that show, we have well documented the ancient belief that extraterrestrials, aliens, came to Earth long, long ago and had a hand in accelerating human evolution. My new interest is, and has been for a good while actually, is in documenting humans that have gone there, how humans can reach out and make contact with other intelligent beings, star walkers, I refer to them. These are beings that have the ability to travel between star systems, mostly through a light body technique, and that people today have an opportunity through not just myths and legends, but also through, most notably, entheogenic substances to make contact with these beings and to participate in the overall mission of the Star Walkers, which is the awakening and ascension and enlightenment of all particles or souls in the known universe.
That is so exciting. I mean, I'm like jumping out of my skin, jumping out of my chair. And there are pieces of that that we're going to go into as we discuss. So yeah, beings who have descended to Earth, Earthlings who have ascended to other places, and how that relates to today, what we're doing, where we're going, what is the promise and the hope. So William, what got you started on this path as what I would call a spiritual researcher and seeker, and when? I think this might be a story that fewer people know about.
Yeah, so I had moved from Detroit to Nashville in 1982. I was 20 years old, and decided I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. And I was attending a small, back then it was a small Southern Baptist school that offered an entertainment music business program. But the catch was you had to take Bible study classes at this school, and I knew nothing about the Bible. I mean, I always like to say that in our home, the four apostles were Waylon, Willie, Chris, and Johnny, and Rita Coolidge was Mary
Right
Magdalene,
on. Some of
right?
which became neighbors of yours or were neighbors of yours in childhood, right?
Yeah, right. And so here I am in this really, a fundamentalist Christian college, middle of the buckle of the Bible Belt. And I'm in a sophomore sociology class, and the professor assigns us to go find a contemporary book, a new book, whose implications would impact Christianity, and write a 3-page review of this book. And off I go to the local bookstore, and here's this brand new international bestseller called Holy Blood, Holy Grail, which I'm sure many are familiar with. And its premise is the crucifixion was a hoax. Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married. After the crucifixion, they moved to a small hilltop village in southern France. They stashed all their secrets there. Catholic Church knew all about it, wiped out 1 million Cathars in the 13th century to keep a lid on this secret knowledge, and humans could turn into angels. And that was the real power pack right there that launched me on this quest. I instantly knew, as I know others did who read Holy Blood, Holy Grail by the millions, that others believe they know this story. They know this is true. I do believe that in the resurrection and ascension. That's something I would take issue with the authors. But the fundamental idea, the power pack in that book, was that there's a lost original version of Christianity. And I wanted to know, what is that? Who was Yeshua? Who is Mary Magdalene? Who is the Mother Mary? Where did they come from? And what is the real story and mission of this Holy Family?
Yeah. And I want us to talk about that in a bit. Let me ask you on the personal level, why are you so intrigued about human spiritual potential, transformation, ascension? Why is this a driving passion of yours? What's personal about it for you? What do you think you're ultimately seeking for
Mhm.
yourself?
Well, I believe that human transformation, that's the fundamental reason why we are here. We all of our spiritual quest is ultimately aimed at our ascension into a higher form of a being.
Yeah.
This is the purpose of the Earth School. So I think that fundamentally drives everyone at some level. We're all seeking something, and I am seeking specific knowledge about that transformation and how to connect with these high spiritual beings that every religious and spiritual tradition speaks of, but don't allow you contact with.
Hmm.
And I recognize that there's going to have to be an awakening of our consciousness in order for that to happen. There might even be a transformation of our being in order to fully embrace and to walk with those beings. And that's why it became so important. But furthermore, we are at a time right now, as I've written about for the past 20 years, where there are forces on this planet that seek to transform the human body technologically, this transhumanism. And it, in my opinion, is incompatible with spiritual ascension. That in fact, what is happening now, and it's almost like a vice grip is being tightened in our world, is that while it seems as if there's more an expansion going on, there's really, in some cases, a contraction of what we're going to be able to speak about, what we're going to be able to experience. And that means we're all experiencing a ticking clock at this moment, that we have to understand this now and affect a transformation into a higher state of being, because it is the only way for the human species to survive.
Yeah, and it does feel like a bit of a race against time. Always, this spiritual development is paralleled by some kind of technological doings, be it divine birth and cloning.
Right.
We can talk about that. We'll talk about that on May 11th, perhaps,
Sure.
or be it ascension versus getting caught into an AI mesh, right?
Exactly. These
So,
forces have been on our planet for millennia upon millennia, and now we're experiencing the next iteration of what the scenes described as a battle between the children of light and the children of darkness. And
yeah,
it doesn't have to be a war, but there is a conflict here that must be harmonized. It's like the caduceus.
yeah, Yeah, that is here. We are in duality, right?
Mhm.
So let me just ask you before I go into some of these other questions, what is what is your deepest desire for yourself in this lifetime? What would you what would you love to see happen, achieve for yourself as a soul, as a spirit?
Well, I am a seeker of ancient artifacts and relics, the throne of Christ, the portals of the ancients, and my ultimate quest would be able to assist, be part of the revelation of perhaps that throne or the awakening or opening of these portals. And this is something that I don't take upon myself as this is my sole quest, because there are many, many other people that are involved in a similar quest. And I believe this is the fundamental or the ultimate, perhaps, quest and calling of our time. In other words, if we have to believe that we deserve to have these tremendously miraculous occurrences and artifacts to be revealed in our world. And we're on the cusp of this. We're on the cusp of awake or opening wormholes. We're on the cusp of understanding biblical prophecy and the return of these holy beings. And to be one of those with a hand on the curtain and pull back that veil, that would be my ultimate quest.
All right. Um, so now you've been a voice on Ancient Aliens for, as you said, 12 years. And it's such a popular show, right?
Yeah.
And it has that controversial term aliens, like it's sort of a shock that so many people got into it. And you have said that, it has all these closet viewers that are the CEOs of whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, Watching it. So then let's clarify. I mean, I think we're getting the picture as you're talking, but what's an alien to you? And have you ever encountered one?
Right. Well, by definition, an alien is any being, whether flesh and blood or spiritual being, that does not originate on Earth.
Mhm.
A visitor, a cosmic visitor. That is what we mean by aliens, and this is what we discuss on Ancient Aliens: is the proliferation of all these stories. In every single culture, there is a myth or a legend, a story, which we believe is probably actually based in fact, that the heavens open and a sky being came down and taught people. These aliens, these extraterrestrials, were our original teachers in many of these traditions. And this is what we're trying to link together on Ancient Aliens, is this common belief and also a common technology that is shared around the world. The pyramid building, for example, and the ability to wield megalithic stones. But my personal interest is then the revelation of spiritual and transformational mysteries that also accompany these stories. They not only want to give us rudimentary technological ideas, they want to tell us how we too can migrate into space and live in the motherverse.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, it's more than just can we find the crashed saucer-shaped vehicle back in Sumeria or whatever.
Yeah,
But it's what does this mean for us today spiritually, really?
yeah,
And the show is great in terms of the history
yeah.
that it shows, the imagery, the people that it gets talking, and the breadth of topics.
Yes.
What are some of your favorite of the 200 plus episodes that have been done? What are some of your favorite themes, and in particular that you've talked about
Mhm.
on the show?
I've introduced a number of angles, if you will, to the show. One, the spiritual aspect of these questions. Two, most notably, all the Stargate and wormhole symbolism that appears, because ancient astronaut theory emerges from the work of Eric Van Daniken,
Mhm.
and most notably. And in his view, we're talking about technology. We're talking about technological craft and flesh and blood beings that come from other worlds. There's nothing spiritual really going on. It's all technology. And of course, I flip it on its head and say, well, it's all spiritual
Right.
with some technology. And the technology itself can even be a spiritual type of technology. So I'm always advocating and speaking about the gateways, the portals, the transformation that is undergone preparatory to entering those portals and gateways. And that's really my specialty. Angels as well, of course.
Wow. So have you had an experience going through a portal, a wormhole, encountering a being of any kind in any dimension?
Of course, when I dream, I've had those experiences like many people, but most notably, I have not made direct contact. I have not had a close encounter of the first through the fourth kind. Well, I take that back. I've had close encounters of the first and second kind where I'm seeing lights in the sky and apprehending a craft of some kind and a physiological effect from that. Just a sighting. I was up in Southern Washington at a conference once at a well-known retreat center where people often have encounters with or sightings of craft. And I had an encounter with an orb of light that
Uh-huh.
just opened up my heart in ways that I knew there's no possible way that the US military has any kind of technology like that. This was something that was beyond a hardware device that had caused this. So yeah, I've had those experiences, and then also experimenting with entheogens as well. I've also
Yeah.
had face-to-face contacts with numerous otherworldly beings, priests and priestesses, goddesses, Mary Magdalene, Jesus, and others. In that state of mind, you're able to make contact with and have direct conversations with anyone you like, and that's who I chose to seek out in those experiences.
Oh, yeah, now we're talking. Okay, so um, so entheogens, yeah, speak to this a little bit because it still is somewhat controversial. There are different types. There are the natural plant-based, there are the more chemical.
Mhm.
Um, what would you like to share with us about that and your personal encounter with it?
Sure. Yeah. So entheogens, which of course we all know the word means to awaken the divine within, have been on my radar for almost 25 years. I resisted using them for the first 24 years of that time period. I mean, I had been told by researchers that, William, one day you're going to wake up and realize everything you're talking about in some of this ancient Egyptian technology is a mushroom. And back that was in 1999, and I was just kind of like, yeah, right, okay, next. But I paid attention and started accumulating quite a large library of academic works about the use of sacred mushrooms as a sacrament, as a psychedelic sacrament. I'm an art aficionado and historian. I'm very intrigued by the just huge number of works of art that portray or conceal Amanita muscaria mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms. And of course, the work of Terence McKenna was hugely influential, documenting DMT as a religious tool, an experience perhaps used by Moses and others. And so I was gathering this large database of knowledge about it. And finally, it came to the point where I felt somewhat like a dolphin in an aquarium. I knew there was this vast cosmic ocean out there, but I kept bumping my nose up against the glass. And then finally, the glass opened. And I've begun in the past, say, 18 months or so, a course of dedicated, accelerated academic study about entheogens, but also personally experimenting with them. I'm one of those that it's like, hey, if I'm going to be talking about the rainbow light body, for example, as I have for 15 years, I'm going to also try to incorporate that as a practitioner as well. What's the fun of researching something and knowing about it if you can't actually experience it? Or what authority do you have to write about something if you haven't actually experienced some of it? So I'm very much an advocate of, hey, I'm gonna walk my talk. And it cost I made a huge decision to embrace this and recognizing that there are some people that simply think it's evil.
Yeah.
uh, they think it's wrong. They think it's anti-spiritual. And I couldn't disagree more on all of those points. I think there is such solid evidence that has been used throughout time. And the study of these medicinal plants and even some of the synthetic substances that are now coming onto our market is utterly fascinating. You learn so much about how our body actually functions and how it can open portals and gateways into other realms and heal itself, which is the ultimate purpose and reason for my embracing entheogens, was wanting to heal like everyone.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yes. Uh, this is the ground, this is the domain, right? Because it gets you open into the requisite vibration where you're able to see. We were talking over the weekend at the Earth Origins conference about the oil or whatever it is that's put on the eyes, right? In the ancient Egyptian tradition that opens the eyes. It's like, okay, well, what is that? A literal substance that can open the third eye and other parts of the body,
Right.
mind, spirit. So let's talk about what have been some of your greatest hits in the entheogenic state. Maybe two or three experiences you've had that have blown you away that are validating or beyond what you would even expected or
Mhm.
moved deeply.
Mhm. Well, I'll start with my first Changa experience. Changa is smokable dimethyltryptamine, or smokable ayahuasca.
Not to be confused with the chaga that you can get at Whole Foods and other places, right? Okay,
Right. Yeah, right.
Changa. All
Changa.
right.
Yeah. And it's a short lasting experience, about 30 minutes or so, but it's almost instant. As soon as you inhale the Changa, it's like a shimmering veil appears, a geometric veil, and suddenly you can be anywhere. And where I went in my first experience was into a temple that I recognized as the most magnificent iteration of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt. She's the goddess of love and joy. And I knew I was in the original of this temple. Okay. One quick little mindset thing as I approach this, I'd like to think about that we live in like a fractal version of the original world. Like for example, Paul McCartney, and the most recorded song of all time is Paul McCartney's song "Yesterday."
Mm,
Paul McCartney would say he didn't write that; he dreamed that song.
mm.
And what I always wondered is, well, if Paul dreamed that song, who originally wrote it? Where did that song come from? And
Right.
what did the original sound like? Because often when we bring information back from a dream, it's an echo of that original. And so when I entered into this Changa space, into this Temple of Hathor, it was like that. It was a million times more magnificent than the earthly version, as beautiful as that is. And I enter this temple. It's all purple. It's blue, purple and blue, and I see this magnificent, massive, very large purple Egyptian ascension throne, and I recognize it as an ascension throne because I've spent 20 years studying these thrones. They're typically feathered in Egyptian depictions. This one was filled with stars, and
Oh, of
oh my God, of course, it's filled
course.
with stars. It's a star. It's a star vehicle.
Mechanism. Yes.
Exactly. It's
Wow.
exactly. And then all of a sudden, with that recognition, there was this mermaid's tail gently just swaying on the throne, shimmering and like a peacock, iridescent like a peacock's feather. And all of those hues of purple and blue and green, just magnificent. And then she spoke to me and she said, William, your work in Egypt with the starboats of eternity, the Ark of the Millions of Years, or the Ship of Isis, is beautiful. And I'm like, wow, how do you know about that? And I'm like, well, thank you. And she's like, no, it's really beautiful. I'm like, well, thank you. And
Wow.
then she says, you know that image on the sarcophagus in the Egyptian museum you've been trying to get? And it's an image of a guy standing on one of these star boats with a resurrection staff in his hand, pulling down the power of the stars with his outstretched hand. And she says, that's you. And I said, yeah, I know. I've spent my whole life researching this. And she says, no, that's you. And I instantly got it at that moment. That was me. That is me. I am this star walker. And it's at that moment I recognized it was like a download, just a big whoosh. This is what I'm going to be doing, is helping people to rise upon this boat of eternity, which is a ship of consciousness, of higher consciousness, based on quantum physics and wormholes. Put that resurrection staff in your hand, which resembles a tuning fork because it helps us to become weavers of the energies of the motherverse and to draw down the power of the stars and to recognize who we are as star walkers. And so that was a profound experience. What a starting place
Yeah.
for journeying into the entheogenic world. And everything I've been doing relative to that is about opening the heart. I mean, for decades, I've spoken about the light body and the necessity to wash our robes of light. Comes from the book of Revelation, where John the Revelator is told, if you want to enter into the celestial realms, you first have to wash your robe of light. And my mission then became this idea of how do we wash our robe of light? Well, first
Mhm.
we have to know we have a light body, and then we have to recognize that there are substances, there are molecules that can help us to get rid of that goo and gunk and all the crap that we call karma and other things that we drag along. And so that was another fallout of these journeys that I've begun and learning from these avatars about how do we do that and recognizing that every single person has the ability to tap into this higher consciousness and heal themselves and awaken themselves through them.
Well, that is such a beautiful sharing and a beautiful launch for you into the other dimensional realms, right? Right out of the starting gate with the beings honoring you. And I too have had this kind of experience where after I had done all of this research on the Pleiades and how they were the seven doves, the seven star mothers of the world, I went up to Mount Burdell in California and did a medicine ceremony. And they said, in thanks to you for that work that you've brought forth to the planet, we are naming you Dove.
Wow. Wow. That's profound. Absolutely profound.
And it was like, oh my gosh, wow. That it's a two-way street. It is a relationship you start
Yes.
understanding with these beings.
Absolutely. And like you, I had done, again, 20 years of research. I was writing a book in 2020 to 2022 before I started this journeying with the medicine about the Christos oil, the anointing oil that dissolved Christ's body into light, and Mary Magdalene's expertise with this oil. It's otherworldly or other dimensional origin. And so all of this was like in alignment for me. And what am I going to do? Just write about something like that? No. You want to be part of it. That's why we're learning about it, is to be able to use it. And I'm so grateful to you and your work on the miraculous conception and the parthenogenesis, because it opened up a whole vein of gold, as I see it, of a true original understanding of who these beings were. Who were the Marys? What was the nature of their oil? What was the purpose of it? Where did it come from? We have that answer now,
Yeah.
or what I think is 99% of the answer. Let me put it that way. And it will ultimately bring to people that revelation of truth that can not only transform their individual lives, but the entire planet once this is fully understood.
Yes, and I think that's some of what we're going to be getting at and sharing in the May 11th Star Walkers Cafe,
Yeah,
as I'm talking about divine birth, the Marys and the Pleiades, and
yeah,
you're talking about the Pleiades as star walking, female beings who came to the planet, and your perspectives on that, which I think it's just going to be an amazing puzzle piecing together.
for sure.
So let's talk about Mother Mary, Magdalene, Jesus a little more, because I know these are three major, I would say, guides for you, perhaps. When did you first start really feeling them,
Hmm.
encountering them as guides, as guardians, as intelligences, who were real and there for you and others?
I would have to say, really, unknowingly at first, in 1997, when I wrote my book, The Peacemaker and the Key of Life, I was tracking the incarnations and appearances of the herald or forerunner of the Christ or Messiah. He's like an advanced man. And he goes by the title peacemaker, but also rainmaker to the Essenes. And the primary function of this figure is to assemble a collection of tools that are utilized by the Messiah and also his feminine counterpart that ultimately represent the throne of Christ. The Greeks call it the etamasia, the throne of preparation.
Mhm.
And over the course of 20 years, this throne suddenly began to sort of crystallize for me in my understanding of it. There's maybe 10 people on the planet that even talk about it at all. And it's integral to the whole Christian story, but like everything else, it was removed from the traditional understanding. They dismiss it. They got rid of it after the 5th century. And it includes the Ark of the Covenant platform, the rod of Aaron, whose name means enlightenment, a flask of manna, which is star food, a hallucinogenic star food, and the jar of anointing oil that can dissolve the physical flesh and blood body into light, can heal the body. They also call it the oil of joy. It produces elevated states of bliss, higher frequencies of love, and that's why it's, again, called the oil of joy. And I begun to really start to piece all this together. And in 2012, it took me from 1997 to 2012 to really start to pull this together. And then I realized I feel like I'm being guided here. I'm being asked to do something, to formulate this knowledge, and it became really clear. And along the way, I had also developed a passionate belief that Mary Magdalene was the true ringleader in this story. Jesus was her daredevil test pilot. I mean, I've been using that line since 2004. And she's like, "Here, babe, let's see if it works this time." And I recognized that there had been a flip that had happened, that, yeah, while Jesus is Lord and Savior for many, it was actually his first apostle and his koinona, his wife and spiritual companion, that probably possessed the integral knowledge, let's put it that way, that would make the Christ revolution actually happen. And they went unacknowledged. But it was crystal clear to me that that was the case. And I wrote about that in my 2005 book, Mary Magdalene, the Illuminator, and really started to recognize we've got to pay more attention, or fuller attention, most certainly, to the divine feminine in this story, because they're the ones that are actually running the show.
Yeah, not to mention, the mother who brought in this avatar, right?
Exactly.
Orchestrating the whole part of it. So how and when did this become personal to you? Like I sang gospel for a year in the San Francisco Bay Area, and there's this one song, He Will Supply, and it says, make it personal. In this one line it says, make it personal. So
Mhm.
when did you start feeling the personal touch? Like, yes, you were having this intuition. I think I'm being called to something here.
Yeah.
When did this become more than intellectual and more personal about these beings?
I would really have to say, Marguerite, it was with my medicine journeys that it became more of an actual, not I wouldn't say a reality, but an understanding of just feeling the love, really, and the understanding that, hey, they have always been there, and now I'm finally catching up to this realization. And then what that does ultimately is it says, you better clean up your act. If you've got anything that's, needing some polishing up or tweaking, it's time to do that. I, we talked the other day, and I said about Mary, I feel like with Mary that we have an understanding that I get her. I get who she is, but that also means I get her,
That's
which means, okay,
right.
dude, do you know what you're asking for here? Do you know the level of integrity, the level of honesty, truth, commitment that requires?
Yeah,
And that's where it gets very personal, because I'm being watched. We're being watched.
yeah.
Okay.
These are
And
the positive watchers.
these are the positive watchers. Yes.
They got their telescopes
Yeah. And it's
into
not
our
in the
dimension.
Right. It's not in the paranoid sense, but this
Yeah.
level of understanding requires a higher level and before any time in your life of responsibility, of recognition and attribution too. I mean, I see where, really this religious devotion comes from. And whether, some people would say some people might be misguided in their devotion or, call it worship, but it's not worship in the sense of just simply obeying in the traditional sense. It's a recognition that, okay, yeah, there is a much more magnificent universe out there. And that is what I'm aligning with and wanting to be a part of.
Yeah, yeah. And in my next book that's coming out, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, I talk about her as basically the head of the early church, if you will, after the crucifixion and everything. She was the one that guided Magdalene on the one hand, Peter on the other, and then at every Easter, and she would send them out, have them bring these teachings out to the known world, and and then they would come back to her every Easter with their triumphs and their problems and all this and that. So it's like she's doing that now, but from, the higher dimensional level. And I know exactly what you mean about the integrity and the vibration and the healing that you must do.
Mhm.
That is part of this cleanup operation. You're healing yourself, your wounds, you're healing your wounds in past lives, you're healing your ancestry by healing these wounds now and coming into connection with the virtues. And that's something I'm going to be bringing forth in the fall when I have my Mary and Magdalene Priestess program. We're
Beautiful.
going to have a section dedicated to the virtues, the high values,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Integrity, honesty, all this. So of course, watch out because the opposite will always show up.
Yeah.
But coming to that and not in a tight kind of moralistic way, but more like this is what's needed to get over into the other side, right?
That's
This is
right.
what's needed to bring that into us the way Magdalene did, going up and down 7 times a day through that ancient story of her ascension practice, right?
Right.
Bringing it into earth, bringing it into her body.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that is interesting how 23 of the 24 years thus far, right? You've been mainly talking about this, you've been having an intuition, and then finally, boom, the entheos happens, the doors open, the veils part. And you're like, wow, you people are real. I am feeling you on a very real level. Okay, I'm getting these other messages from you. That's very, very exciting. So, where are you going with them and this, do you think? Personally, intellectually?
Yeah.
And okay, let's start with that. And then I have another related question.
Ultimately, where I see this going at this present moment is the recognition is that we have to get some magic glasses on. We have to open our vision in order to see and experience these beings.
Yeah.
And what I'm wanting to do, I mean, there's millions of people around the world that are experimenting with the entheogens right now. And they are having experiences with DMT or MDMA or ayahuasca or Changa or toad medicine, whatever it is. And they're having these powerful encounters and experiences with light beings and angels and otherworldly beings, but they don't quite have like to in a manner of speaking, the plastic thingy that holds the six pack of all their experiences together.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to provide that plastic thingy to say, okay, here is this territory that you've entered into. Here are who these beings are, and here ultimately is the purpose of these experiences. This cleansing of the light body, the washing of the robe of light, the transfiguration, and to keep these experiences within the realm of the sacred, the ceremonial, or the holy, because this is transformation that must occur. MDMA, for example, has been so long used, or for 2 decades, been used and became illegal because it was used as a party drug. And,
Yeah.
and that's one level of manifestation, but there's a whole nother sacred aspect of it that has to be acknowledged and promoted because that's why it's here.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And of course, wouldn't it be great if this medicine could just keep stretching open our third eye or however we want to envision this to be that way all the time, right? That's we want to be those light walkers, those star walkers.
Exactly.
We want to experience fifth dimensional and higher consciousness, new earth consciousness, right? So
Yeah.
my hope is that these medicines will teach us and will train us and train us to stay in those states longer and be able to handle them, because we have handled a lot of our personal work and the world is getting kinder, and we don't have to encounter such clashing energy when we go out there and we are that open, right? So
Right.
it's definitely a process. Um,
I can remember, if I may, just
please.
something that really impacted me. I remember when I first met Greg Braden in Nashville in 1994. I mean, we both had hair down to here, and he was just getting going, and I was, aspiring. I was doing my research in that, and we were talking about the Hopi prophecy of the time of transformation, when love would become the base vibration in our world. And that just really impacted me. I thought, yeah, that is the goal. What if we could live in a world free of fear, where love became the base vibration instead of fear? What that would mean is that if love is the base vibration, then there's perhaps a love beyond love that we can strive for. And so the entheogens put us in that state of love where you can absolutely feel it. And now you're in that place, you have a step up where now you can reach up into that love beyond love. And that could be what we think of as 5D. The entheogens could be the 4D world. We're, of course, in 3D. And so in order to raise to the level of the 4D, we've got to bring in that 5D. And this is what these experiences are all aiming at. We're trying to create a culture with the virtues, with the beatitudes. This is the way of living in the 5D world. And now we just have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a daily practice. I mean, because I continue on in my classes teaching and having people go through experiences. And finally, the other day, I had a course that just concluded and is now in replay, called Sacred Relationship and Sexual Healing with Magdalene and Jesus. And also my Mother Mary circle. I just said, Mary's, how do we make this permanent in our lives? And
Right.
basically, the answer was just keep pumping the iron, just keep doing the practices, just keep stretching, just keep doing it every day, whatever it takes, to do healing that day, or get yourself into a higher vibration that day, or work with the imagery of light, or,
Right.
any of these things. So, it might not just be, alas, a one-stop, one and done. Now I'm
No. Right.
completely in the seventh dimension, walking on the earth.
Right.
There's more of a ways to go, but I think that what's happening with everybody with entheogens and the deeper spiritual levels that we're going, and all of these starseed individuals who are coming to the planet, we are moving, I believe, in the right direction, alongside all of the techie stuff, right? That's like, no, come here, little
Yeah.
Sheba, come to me.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, is there anything else you want to say about that right now?
Just that, hey, if you haven't experienced it, try to understand it. Recognize that of course, entheogens, you can take MDMA or ayahuasca, Changa, but also recognize you're capable of producing these same molecules endogenously
Blessed be.
through breath work, through meditation. It's possible to get there. But as it's been expressed to me, yeah, you can do all that, the breath work and meditation, or you can take the Concord if you
I
prefer.
know.
You know?
I know. I remember this one friend of mine, Yana, she had gone to this teacher who was teaching all about the Asclepion and dream incubation. And she was
Yeah.
kind of lying, and she looked at me and she said, just give me the drugs. you know, but no, I mean, we want both, and right. We want them to be the training wheels of us to get
Exactly.
into the star
Exactly.
realms, right?
Exactly.
We don't want to get addicted into it, because a lot of us have memories of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And, we were talking, Magenta Pixie had this chilling channeling, I guess, I don't know, a year and a half ago, where she said that the reason Atlantis fell was because they had developed this kind of chemical experience for people that was so compelling that people just went into it,
Mhm.
and they could no longer sort of cope with life as it is or develop these capacities themselves. And they just kind of got locked into this thing. And that's what led to the fall of Atlantis. So I think the people who think that it's evil and this and that are having that memory. They're remembering, whoa,
Yeah.
we have gone wrong down these chemical pathways.
Right.
Uh, and so we've got to be careful. And we are in duality. As always, you have to have discernment.
Absolutely. And
No
again, this,
one free ride, because as soon as you think you're gravy train on the right path, the shadow comes right back around behind you to show you
yeah.
something else or how you're getting hijacked. It's very strenuous right now to be on planet Earth, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I mean, again, going back to 1994, Greg Braden, the continuation of that conversation is that we talked about how there was going to be an acceleration. And in 1994, if you use the analogy of a merry-go-round, we were really thrilled that we were jumping on when it was going about this speed. And then 1999, it was about like this, and then 2020, 12, and here we are 2024, and it feels about something like that.
It's
You
starting
know,
to lift off.
yeah, it's starting to lift off. So if you haven't gotten a hold by now, it's time to grab your piece of string here and pull yourself aboard, because otherwise it's going to be, could be a blender.
Yeah, yeah. And what he had said and what you were saying about the love vibration, that brings me to the Sacred Heart, that
Hmm.
is such the featured element of Jesus and Mother Mary and Magdalene, the Sacred Heart, right? And
Yeah,
to me, it's kind of like, ooh, that scary, lugubrious image that my grandmother had above her bed
right.
when I was
Yeah,
a child. It literally looked like a beating heart that somebody had pulled from an
yeah,
Aztec ritual. And it was just so scary. I'm like, I want nothing to do with that, my
yeah,
God. But when you really get into what is this Sacred Heart, this is the centerpiece of it all, along with the sacred womb, right?
right.
Which really, as Sri Kaleshwar says, are the same thing,
Hmm.
essentially.
Hmm.
But speak a little bit more about the Sacred Heart, and then we will finish up by talking about Mother Mary, the
Sure.
Pleiades, the Starwalker Cafe, and give people a little taste. But yeah, the Sacred Heart.
Yeah, I'm with you, Marguerite. Again, I'm an art aficionado and collector of religious art. Images, and I've got several thousand images that I've collected over the past, whatever, 15 years or so. And I was somewhat repelled by the Sacred Heart images of Christ. They were so Catholic, so I just didn't get it. I would stand in churches. And I remember being in one, though, in Quebec about 7, 8 years ago, and seeing this beautiful image of the Sacred Heart with this ray of light coming out of Christ's heart. And I recognized, okay, there's something more going on here. So I made a concerted effort to collect more and more of those images. And then, getting through the work of, say, like Joe Dispenza, recognizing the molecules that are produced endogenously within us, the benzodiazepines that get rid of the fear and put us into elevated states of love, the pinolines that can cause illumination, the dimethyltryptamine produced in our pineal gland, and the oxytocin produced in our heart that puts us into extreme states of bliss and
Right.
enable other dimensional experiences. And suddenly I understand it now. Why, like the Franciscans, why Francis of Assisi taught, put one of these images on your altar, contemplate, meditate, reflect on it, get into this vibration. And
Wow.
perhaps there was a secret teaching about releasing these hormones and molecules endogenously that went along with it.
Yeah.
I remember just on this subject, reading something that really got me when I was researching the entheogens is the perspective, the belief that the Franciscans would shave the top of their head.
Oh,
The razor burn would open up the blood vessels, and they would pour a hallucinogenic oil into this bowl shape area to awaken their consciousness. And the bowl shape of the haircut prevented the oil from running down their face. Well, that changes the
wow.
story of Francis of Assisi and Clare going up high on the mountain and lighting fire and being illuminated and all of this is because they're entering in these higher realms. It also explains why Francis would say you need to meditate on the images of the divine heart, because it's all about getting that flood of oxytocin merged with dimethyltryptamine. Now you're having this full-blown ecstatic experience, otherworldly experience, where you can connect with these divine beings. And this is probably how, in my opinion, Francis of Assisi was able to perceive Christ as a seraphim angel in his resurrected state, and how Francis then received those rays of light from Christ as a seraphim and actually transmuted himself into a semi-angelic being and actually completed his own ascension. So this is really powerful information, and it goes back to these Sacred Heart images.
Not to mention that it would explain how he was the one who got along with the animals, right?
Mhm.
Come to him. So he's entering into that state where they are, and they're like,
Exactly.
oh, someone, a safe human who's actually in our world. Yes, I can go up and feed from his hand. And this
Right.
is how it should be. This is how we should even be with the creatures of the planet, which we
Absolutely.
come to see as enemies and
Yeah.
so forth. So
Yeah. And here's the other point too, is that, oh, okay, so, for centuries we've heard Francis of Assisi was so special. He's the only one who was ever able to do this for the past 800 years. Well, that's a bunch of crap, because now we know the technology, or the possible way or technique that he did this. That means you and I can have that same experience. And that was the point of Francis opening up that window, was not so and only he could have that experience, but so all of us could.
well, Marguerite wants to be at your next workshop about this. She'll take your communion any day.
Hey, right. I mean,
Okay.
excuse me, I've got a bug here. We are really on the cusp of that, of being able to,
Yeah.
we know what that original sacrament was. We can duplicate that. We can engage in this experience. We can become like these figures that they wanted us to. That was the point. I
Yeah.
mean, walk as children of light is what Jesus admonished us to do. Star walk as children of light. That is our calling. As little brother James taught, faith without works is dead. We're supposed to be doing these things, becoming these beings.
Wow. I just had a vision of you and me and perhaps others being the facilitators of this and walking among them and being able to hold the ground. We can be the grounding rod because of all that we've gone through and this and that, and just helping to hold the space for people.
Yeah. Between us, we have the academic side of it absolutely covered in a way
That's
that
right.
has not been covered in probably almost 2,000 years. And I'm just not throwing that out there lightly. I am saying that
Yeah.
you've studied this 30 years. I've studied this 30 years.
Yeah.
We know. We know what was missing, what was taken away, what was obscured, what was
Yeah.
truly attempted to destroy. And to bring that back presents a step up for people in a way that is meant to be for this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Blessed be. Wow. Well, I mean, this is incredible. As our final piece, let us talk a little bit about the Star Walkers Cafe event on May 11th, 2024, or in replay if you're watching this afterward. What is the purpose of the Star Walkers Cafe? And then let's just chat briefly about what you and I will be talking about, what we're
Mhm.
offering people that is really kind of a new synchrony here.
Right. Yeah. What I've wanted to create is a gathering place, like a cafe, where people can come together and share these ideas and learn about this process of, I've been an ascension scholar, historian for 15 years, and I've watched that word just diminish in its value. As it's become popularized, it's also just become just kind of liquefied in so many ways. It doesn't mean anything anymore for a lot of people. So I've decided that, ascension's not the right word. Star walking is really what we're talking about here, journeying from star to star and connecting with these other star walkers. They're out there, they're looking for us just as much as we're looking for them. And to meet them in the middle and to provide a safe space where people can share their experiences about it, learn about this process of everything from ascension to entheogens to transfiguration, divine feminine, stargates, wormholes. That is the purpose. And so it's an event series that I started earlier this year, January of 2024, and I'm thrilled to have you, Marguerite, as my first guest as a guest presenter.
Yeah.
Because I think your work is that important in establishing the veracity of this, the historicity of it, and also ultimately the importance of it in our world.
Yeah.
It's coming to light now because we need it more than ever.
Yes, yes. My piece being the reality of divine conception,
Yeah,
women's abilities to conceive in multiple types of ways, but
right.
especially this one technology that Mother Mary used in her way, and I believe Jesus and Magdalene used in their way, to conceive divine avatars of very high vibration that were beyond the fray of all these other negative energies and so forth that could just boom, come in, and these beings have periodically reincarnated from or come through these traditions, the Haudenosaunee of the you know of North America and so forth. So yes, so Mother Mary, what it's not, I'm not just going to be talking about Mother Mary, but what were these priestesses all about more broadly? What were their technologies? How do the Pleiades relate to that and even the formation of humankind? And how did that lead into Jesus and giving lots more information around that? So
Mhm.
that's my piece of it. And then I know you're talking about the Pleiades females, the Pleiads,
Yes.
the star walkers, arrivers to this planet. Did you want to say something more about that?
Yeah, because what crystallized for me as I started to dive into your work is the recognition that yeah, they came here and they did duplicate themselves, if you will, parthenogenically. And what an elegant way to travel the stars to arrive and then just essentially create a clone of yourself from within yourself autogenically.
Right.
But
Not the cloning that they're trying to do in the labs.
exactly. But what I felt that I offered to this conversation was with my understanding of the rainbow light body and the transfiguration, is how they got here to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm imagining and envisioning a tribe of priestesses, say somewhere in the Pleiades, for example, that decide they're perhaps in flesh and blood bodies very much like our own.
Yeah.
And they have the ability to dissolve that body into its divine nature, its divine essence. The Tibetans call it the rainbow light body, and to use a Star Trek term, beam themselves from
Yeah.
world to world and then
You
phase
see?
into physicality.
Okay, see, because that's the missing link. I was always like, okay, the Pleiades, seven mothers of the world, but how did they actually get here? Like I've been trying
Right.
to work into that. And
Yes.
so now this makes complete sense to me. So
Right.
that's really exciting, and how Mother Mary was related. And William, I'm thinking about the eight women that were like the spokes of the wheel
Right.
that were working together in that ritual that produced Jesus from Mother Mary, and I do believe John the Baptist from Elizabeth, even though it seems they make it look like he was a little bit before, but
Right.
it's like, no, they were all using that red thread technology and things like that, and they were working as a group, right?
Yes.
As a wheel.
Absolutely.
And it feels like the seven Pleiades. And we have these other groups, the seven Morgans, the Astamatrikas, the eight Matrikas, and all that. So there's the Hathors, right? I think you're going to be talking about that. Um, it's very, very exciting to start drawing in, weaving together these disparate pieces that have seemed so far apart. And yet now we're realizing that it's all part of one glorious tapestry, you know. Um,
Exactly. And what
so
it provides for people, the benefit for a man or a woman to plug into this is a more fuller and complete understanding of the spiritual technology that is our human body,
that's right.
what it is capable with and or what it is capable of, and also how to connect with these beings. Because I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of like, we could talk about this bottle all day long. Oh, look, it's beautiful, it's white, blah, blah, blah. This is what historians and theologians do. They talk about the bottle. What
That's
we're
right.
actually talking about is saying, yeah, and you know what? If you take the lid off of it, there's something inside
Exactly.
and it's good for you.
Exactly.
And it
And if
feeds you.
nothing else, we will be giving people a lot of fodder for their own medicine journeys, all right? A few more ideas,
Right.
because the intellectual, the knowledge inspires the intuition or the experience, as
Yeah.
you saw after 23 years of all this research. And then it was like, oh my God, these beings are saying, hey, thanks, and by the way, here's a few tips. Oh,
Right.
and I'm giving you a Vajra in your hand, right? So that's what happens. We start realizing how much of a relationship this is, and what we're being not only asked to do, but invited into, right? This
Yeah.
is the amazing part of it.
Yeah. And
So,
I'm glad you mentioned the Vajra, because I do like to mention that story, because it just, I think you have to have a healthy dose of humility, more than a healthy dose of humility to approach this, and humor. And so, yeah, in one of my journeys, Mary Magdalene and a tribe of priestesses were working on me. I was laid out on like a crystalline slab, and Magdalene was running energy through my feet. I could feel it in my physical body in the journey. It was electrifying. And then all of a sudden it was almost like quite clinical. She took an object and hold out your hand. She went like that, put it in. All of a sudden I looked, it's like, wait, I've got a Vajra in my hand. That's the symbol of the power of lightning and plasma. And I could feel it in my hand. And for days afterward, this experience, my hand was literally on fire.
yeah,
With healing energy, with that higher frequency. And I'm part of myself, a little bit of the ego is going, wow, aren't you special? You've got this Vajra in your hand. And it's like, wow, who are that kind of thing, right? You got to keep that in check. And
yeah.
what helped keep me in check is that my partner Julie got me a kitten several months later. And then in Christmas, her son got me a cat laser pointer for my kitten. And I realized, oh my gosh, that's what was put in my hand, right? And it's like, no disrespect to the event, William, but hey, chill out, dude. It was Mary Magdalene. Oh, you got this cat coming, and you're really going to need this to be able to entertain her, right?
That's right. I mean, it's just so great. I mean, but humility is one of those virtues. And most of us have had enough woundings and experience, and hopefully, the level of maturity that we can keep in check the power and the ego, right? Because the ego, we've seen how wrong the ego can
Oh my
go.
gosh. Right, exactly.
Had those experiences and been abused by all that type of thing, by these, leaders who fall off the rail.
Right.
Um, so yeah, it's really part of a process. So is there anything else you would like to say about Starwalker Cafe, our event, or anything else before we?
It's just that I'm so elated to have been introduced to your work, Marguerite. I mean, I've described it to you, and I'll describe it again. It's like a vein of gold that's suddenly been revealed. It's a
Oh,
vein of truth, and it's a vein of just gleaming understanding. And that by stepping into this world, it's going to enable us to get a truer understanding, finally, of the Magdalene and of Yeshua, and especially of Mary, and just the majesty of what it was they were trying to create for humanity. And how finally now we're able to appreciate that. And now we can more fully participate in it too. And this isn't just for us. This is for all future human generations. This can become a benchmark understanding that for the next, say, 1,000 years, we'll be able to we can't even fathom or even contemplate perhaps the benefit of this understanding.
that's right. It makes you even maybe want to reincarnate again,
Yeah,
you know,
you're right.
just
I
to
didn't think
see
about
what's going to happen. So
exactly. Yeah, if
yeah,
this is offered,
yeah.
I'm in. Right.
That's right. That's right. As long as, it's not going to be worse. Um, yes. And thank you so much for that honoring, because, as we know, it's a long road toiling away in
Yeah,
semi-relative obscurity and
total. Right. I get it.
working and getting the kicks of life to bring
Yeah.
in the humility. So now here we are, right? There
Yeah.
seems to be a cosmic timing.
Yes.
All right. All right. With that, I will thank you so much for coming on today. We
My
look
pleasure.
forward to being together. Everybody, please catch us for Williams Starwalker Cafe live on May 11th, 2024, or in replay using the link in the show notes to register. Thank you again, William, for your time today and your amazing work on the planet. We wouldn't be the same without you.
Sweet.
And to all of our viewers, please like and share this video. Please subscribe to this channel. And until the next episode of Bridging Dimensions, bye for now.